Hello, researchers, and welcome back. I'm calling this lesson Introduction to Formal Research, and it's adapted from Chapter 1 in our textbook. All right, so let's get started. Where am I? Okay, so what is research? Basically, it's a process, right? The researcher poses a question, the researcher collects data to answer that question, and then the researcher presents an answer to the question or decides what the answer is. And I put a little mascot there, Sid the science kid, who, if you have young children, you may have recognized from PBS. Um, Sid the Science Kid is a preschooler who, along with his classmates and his family, does investigations. And I just put that there just to remind us that ever since you were very young, you've been asking questions, collecting data to answer those questions, and then based on the data that you saw, deciding what the answer is. And so we all do research. Anytime a young person or an older person asks the question why and then seeks to find out, we're doing research, okay? And so basically, we're just going to formalize in this class something that you already know how to do and that you've done since you were very small. Um, Research, as defined on our in our glossary on our Augusta University website, research is a systematic investigation, including research development, testing, and evaluation, that is designed to develop or contribute to generalizable knowledge. So we're going to learn how to do systematic investigations at a graduate level that are designed to develop new knowledge or contribute to existing generalizable knowledge. All right. So why? Why do research? First, to add to our knowledge, to address gaps in what we know, to expand, to replicate what others have found out, or to add the voices of specific individuals to kind of the general knowledge base. To improve practice. Now, this is the most important reason that we're going to be focusing on in this class. Research can help improve practice. Educators gain new ideas for their job, for their work. Educators gain new insights into approaches, and educators can connect with other educators through the process of doing research. And finally, to help inform policy debates. So, research allows people to weigh different perspectives on various issues and enables people to make informed decisions regarding policy. And when we're talking about policy, generally we're talking about the decisions that are made at the district, state, or national level. Some problems with research today. Um, there were five main problems listed in the textbook: contradictory or vague findings, questionable data, unclear statements about the intent of the study, lack of full disclosure of the data collection procedures, inarticulate or an inarticulate rendering of the research problem. Now, these are all problems in some research today. But the main problems that we're going to be talking about addressing, or this course is structured to reduce the following two problems in the research base or knowledge base that exists today. One big problem of a lot of educational research is that the research itself does not help improve practice because practitioners were not involved in designing it or doing it. The people designing it or doing it were people like me, professors in universities, some of whom may be far removed from the classroom. Another problem is that some research is hegemonic in how it is conducted, reported, or disseminated. And by that, I mean it is done in such a way, reported in such a way, um, and shared in such a way that it actually oppresses those individuals who are the subject of the research. So these are the two main concerns that we're going to be addressing through how this course is designed. Okay, the research process cycle. Okay, so basically, Sid goes through three steps, right? Sid the science kid asks a question, collects data, and says, "Oh, okay, so the answer to my question is X." We're going to talk about a process that has a few more steps than that. The first step, the usual starting point, is right here at the top, identifying the research problem. And then we'll move to talking about reviewing the literature or doing the scholarship part of a study. Next, specifying a research purpose, then collecting data, analyzing and interpreting that data. We're going to spend a lot of time on how you collect, analyze, and interpret both quantitative and qualitative data. And then reporting and evaluating research. And then I added a box, that orange box, take an action, because we're going to be focusing on action research. Okay, so take an action as a seventh step in the research process cycle. Let me talk a little bit more about take an action step, since it's not talked about in chapter 1. For example, some actions that uh, researchers have taken, educator researchers have taken as a result of their research project. They may change their own practice. They may decide to do something different in their classroom. They may convince others to change their practice, other teachers, other educators. And they may share their findings to influence others, whether it is influencing leaders, school leaders, influencing families and community members, influencing the school board, that kind of thing. Okay, so research is about knowledge, right? And there's a real interesting history to Western knowing, Western knowledge, otherwise known as ontology and epistemology. And so let's talk about that history just a little bit, because in order to contextualize different research methods. Okay, so back to the medieval period, theology and mysticism were dominant. Okay, so kind of the way of knowing. Sid the science kid back then might have said, I know universal truth because the monks told me. Okay, theology was dominant. And then we get the age of reason, the so-called scientific revolution, and really the birth of empiricism or the scientific method. I know because I followed a set of procedures that led me to some universal truth, right? And then rationalism and deduction. I know a universal truth because I can prove it through logic. All right. And so that's Bacon and Descartes, right? So, okay. So the the scientific revolution, when we think about it, we think about like astronomy and chemistry and these physical sciences, right? What about people? So that way, that perspective on knowledge is called positivism. This idea, first of all, that there is a universal truth, and that we can find it out either through a set of procedures or through logic and deduction. Okay. But what about people? Then we get to sociological positivism, which was an attempt to apply this methodology apply this perspective that had been applied to things like stars and acids and bases, apply it to people. So I know universal truth about people and society because I use the scientific method. Okay? You see that? So we're not just talking about knowing about objects. And we're applying this idea of there is a universal truth and I can find it out um, to people. Then interpretivism is sometimes called anti-positivism because basically it says, no, I cannot learn about the social realm using the scientific method. Um, I can't just experiment on people and know everything about what there is to know about people. Okay. I can understand social action through interpretive means based on understanding the purpose and meaning that individuals attach to their own actions, and that's Weber, right? And then, okay, so interpretivism. So we have positivism, then we have interpretivism that says no, you can't just apply this positivistic frame or this positivistic epistemology to people. Okay. There's positivism, interpretivism. And now, most recently, um, we have an approach or epistemology called critical theory. I can use social science to critique processes and institutions. So here I'm not um, solely trying to learn about my world. I'm critiquing. Okay, I can use scientific approaches, social scientific approaches, to critique institutions, to critique processes. Okay, all right. So we are going to focus on the quantitative and qualitative research, which are basically come from a positivistic quantitative and or an interpretivistic qualitative perspective. But I'm throwing in some criticalness, as you'll see throughout the course, certain critique of processes and institutions. But we're not learning official critical theory. Okay. So, quantitative research characteristics. Quantitative research is based on positivism. You create purpose statements, research questions, and hypotheses that are specific, narrow, measurable, and observable. So we're adding to this cumulative body of knowledge um, um, with these things that we can see and touch and count, right? So we're collecting numeric data from a large number of people using instruments, and by instruments, um, this again comes from this chemistry, physics, history to quantitative research. And this idea of looking at a large number of people relates to the positivistic idea that we're looking for universal truths, whereas an interpretivistic approach would say that there is no universal truth, it's based on each individual's perspective. And we'll analyze data for trends, group comparisons, and relationships among variables. Specifically with quantitative data, you can answer questions like who, when, where, how often, how much, and your goal is to explain. You get numeric data, your goal is to explain something that is you see happening in the world. Okay, slide 11. Qualitative research characteristics, they're based on interpretivism or this interpretivistic point of view. Um, we explore a problem through obtaining a detailed understanding of a central phenomenon. We collect data based on words from a small number of participants. As you can imagine, understanding an individual's perspective takes time. Okay, and so um, basically we're going to collect from a small number of participants, but we're going to go deep. We're not just going to count something about them. We're going to find out something find out something about their story. We're going to listen to them. We analyze data using text analysis to obtain detailed descriptions and themes. Okay. And we can answer through qualitative approaches, we can answer how and why questions. So, process questions tend to lend themselves to a qualitative approach, and why questions, where we're getting really deep into why something happens in the social world. The goal is to explore. Okay, so more open ended than explain. Explore. Factors in deciding to use quantitative or qualitative research include that we want to match the type of research to our research problems. We want to fit the research to our audiences. We want to relate the type of research to our own experience and training. And in this course, you're going to get some training in both quantitative and qualitative research. So you'll have some skills in both of them. You and then finally, you want to determine what you have the resources to accomplish. An example of that is if you have the time to do a qualitative study, to do a number of interviews, then maybe that's what you choose. If you're limited on the amount of time that you can spend with individuals, then maybe you do a survey, which a quantitative survey, which is you know, often faster, depending on how hard or easy it is for you to get people to take your survey. Important ethical issues in conducting research. Okay. The first thing for any new research project is you need to learn to apply for approval from your institutional review board. For this class, I have received blanket approval from the university for you all to do research projects where you're going to learn about doing research. And the university has an agreement with each of your districts that you're able to do your schoolwork. Okay. So you won't be applying to an official review board. I will be giving you some guidance on getting approval though from your supervisors. There are guidelines from professional organizations. For educators, it's the American Education Research Association, for example. Using ethical practices are important throughout the research, including respectful data collection procedures and showing respect to audiences who read and use the research. And the way this applies to us is that the audience for your research project may be your colleagues at your school. Okay, for example. And so we're going to be conscious of what we say, what we write in our presentations, and in that they're going to be respectful to the individuals who are members of our school communities. Now, there are some specific ethical issues for action research, which is kind of the umbrella term for what most of your research projects will probably be. One is that in action research, you're usually doing research within your own setting, right? And so you already have a relationship with the people that are around you, and you're already in a particular role. And so the trick is that the data collection is not coercive. If you already have power over someone, then you don't want to force them to give you data that they don't want to give. Okay, so there's this dual role, right, of educator and researcher. There has to be attention to caring relationships within action research, um, and also a negotiation of the purpose of the study. There needs to be negotiation between the person who's doing research and those who are involved in who are being researched on. Hopefully, they're not being researched on so much as researched with, but that's an important consideration. What's the purpose of the study and how will the results be used? Are the results only going to be used so that the student researcher can get their homework done and get their grade for their research class? Or will the results be used in some way that's going to benefit that population that's being studied? And finally, not involving participants in all phases of the research. Um, Action research, and there's a history where the researcher may have, oh, I'm going to decide what I'm going to research. I'm going to decide what my research questions are. I'm going to decide how I'm going to find them out. And then somewhere far down the line, I'm going to involve the participants and they're not really going to have a say in what the process is, okay? That can be a problem. All right. Particularly if we're trying to not be oppressive. Okay. So, one of the reminders I want to give is that we are professionals in our settings, in our class. And so I think confidentiality amongst us is going to be key for folks really being able to discuss and delve into some of what they encounter at their schools or other places of work, right? So there is a phrase that I think comes in handy in situations like this, and I hope that um, we can respect each other enough to hold to this in this class. So what you see here, what you hear here, when you leave here, let it stay here. So as you're talking with others at your school, for example, you might there may be something really relevant that comes up in the class, but really being conscious of we're in a small community. You never know who knows who else, and so really making sure that we're maintaining each other's confidentiality. Okay, all right. Thank you, everyone. Bye bye.